They laughed at his worn clothes, not knowing his hands once commanded F1 champions. But when his secret unravels, their world will come crashing down. "Can I fix it in exchange for food?" The words, barely a whisper from lips cracked and parched, hung in the air, instantly met with a chorus of derision. "Listen, Grandpa, this isn't a soup kitchen," sneered Tommy, the youngest grease monkey at Premium Auto, as the man, aged yet carrying an undeniable aura, stepped cautiously through the entrance. His clothes were a tapestry of neglect, his gray hair a wild halo, but there was an electric shimmer in his eyes as they fixated on the sleek Porsche 911, its hood a gaping maw, stubbornly refusing repair for 3 agonizing days. Mark, the shop's owner, didn't even bother to glance up from his stack of invoices. "Kevin, call security. These beggars are a daily nuisance, always looking for handouts." "I'm not asking for money," the man stated, his voice surprisingly steady, imbued with a quiet power that none of them could quite place. "I'm asking for work. I can fix this Porsche for a meal." The suggestion ignited a fresh wave of laughter, echoing through the bays. Tommy nearly fumbled the wrench in his hand, while Kevin, the grizzled veteran with 2 decades of grime under his nails, simply shook his head in utter disbelief. "Did you hear that, fellas?" Kevin bellowed, his voice dripping with scorn. "The bum wants to fix a $200,000 Porsche." Yet the man stood unyielding. His gaze, sharp as a surgeon's, meticulously swept over the exposed engine, a keenness that went completely unnoticed by everyone but Emily Chen, the sole woman technician who observed from the back. A flicker of something, a hint of deep knowledge in his posture, in the way he dissected the machinery with his eyes, stirred a profound curiosity within her. "What exactly is wrong with the car?" he inquired, his voice cutting through the lingering snickers. "What's the problem?" Mark finally pushed himself up from his chair, his face a mask of irritation. "The problem is you're in my shop, acting like you own the place." Unfazed by the hostility, the man merely tilted his head, listening intently as Kevin, in a futile attempt, once again cranked the engine. "Direct injection system," he calmly announced, the words precise. "The fuel pressure sensor is failing. That's why it stalls at high revs. It's not mechanical, it's electronic." A heavy, awkward silence descended. Kevin, with all his years of experience, had spent 3 agonizing days chasing this very phantom, without a single lead. "Just by listening?" Tommy breathed, his usual mockery replaced by genuine astonishment. "How in the world could you know that just by listening?" Mark quickly recovered his swagger. "Pure luck. Anyone can just make a random guess." For the first time, a faint smile touched the man's lips, a poignant curve that hinted at vanished glories. "It wasn't a guess. That distinct sound signals inconsistent data from the sensor to the control unit, causing the engine to cut fuel as a safety measure." Emily, drawn closer by an irresistible pull, felt a jolt of recognition. The technical clarity, the unshakable confidence with which he spoke of complex systems that were far beyond casual understanding, resonated deeply. "How do you know so much about Porsches?" she pressed, ignoring the furious glares from her male colleagues. The man hesitated, a fleeting shadow crossing his eyes, as if weighing how much of his past to unveil. "I've worked with high-performance vehicles before." "Where?" Mark sneered, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "At a junkyard?" Laughter erupted anew, but this time the man's smile was gone. For an agonizing instant, a profound darkness, an ancient agony, flickered in his gaze, a scar invisible to all but Emily. "In various places," he replied, his voice guarded. "I can prove my diagnosis about the sensor. I just need a diagnostic tool." Tommy gestured dismissively toward a gleaming, expensive scanner. "You actually know how to use an advanced OBD scanner?" "I do." The simple, unwavering certainty in his reply momentarily disarmed even Mark, a flicker of grudging intrigue in his eyes. "Fine," Mark finally conceded, a cruel smirk twisting his lips. "I'll give you a shot. If you're right, $20 and a sandwich. But if you're wrong, I never want to see your humiliated face near my shop again. And I'll film every second to post online for the world to see." The man nodded, his composure unnerving, as if such high-stakes wagers were merely a part of his daily existence. Yet, as he moved towards the scanner, Emily noticed something the others missed entirely. His hands weren't trembling with fear. They quivered with a raw, contained anticipation, like someone on the precipice of revealing a long-buried truth, a powerful secret guarded for years. He stood resolute, facing their contempt and cruel amusement, a silent testament to a destiny waiting to unfold. The scanner whirred to life with a sharp beep, and the entire shop crowded around, eager for what they anticipated would be a spectacular failure. Mark already had his phone out, recording every move, while Tommy and Kevin openly placed bets on how quickly the bum would crack. $20 says he can't even turn the thing on, Kevin whispered loudly enough for all to hear. But the man, with effortless grace, connected the diagnostic cable to the Porsche's OBD port, a fluidity that made Emily's brow furrow in wonder. His fingers danced across the scanner's menus as if it were an extension of his own body, diving into diagnostic levels that Kevin, despite his 2 decades, rarely touched. Impossible, Tommy muttered, aghast, as he watched the man bypass the usual protocols and directly access the engine management system. How does he know those access codes? The man, oblivious to their astonishment, remained utterly absorbed by the screen. For a few moments, the only sound was the scanner's rhythmic beeps as it devoured technical data at lightning speed. There it is, he announced calmly, pointing to the display. Code P0294, fuel pressure sensor out of parameters. Just as I said. The silence was deafening. Kevin, his face ashen, stumbled forward to verify the reading. That's correct, he admitted, a reluctant confession. 3 days of searching, and this guy found it in 5 minutes. Mark, his face contorted in annoyance, quickly shoved his phone back into his pocket, his hopes of filming a humiliating spectacle dashed. Beginner's luck, he grumbled under his breath. Anyone can just push random buttons until something works. The man turned to Mark, his eyes now holding a dangerous glint. Do you want me to explain precisely why this particular sensor fails on this model, when the fuel filter isn't changed at the recommended intervals? The question hung heavy, catching Mark completely off guard. He had no answer. Tommy, trying to seize back some control, interjected. Okay, you got lucky this time, but a hunch doesn't make you a mechanic. A hunch? The man's smile returned, devoid of humor. I can list 3 other critical problems this car will develop within the next 6 months if they're not addressed now. How can you possibly know that? Emily asked, stepping closer, her professional curiosity piqued beyond measure. Again, the man hesitated, a battle playing out behind his eyes. Because I've witnessed this exact pattern of failures hundreds of times. The Porsche 911 models from 2011 to 2015 have a predictable sequence of issues when poorly maintained. Kevin gaped, shaking his head. Hundreds of times? Where on earth did you work to see Porsches hundreds of times? In places where cars like this were the norm, not the exception, he replied, his words carefully chosen. Mark, his face reddening, hated the way the conversation was slipping from his grasp, his authority challenged by a man who, by all appearances, should have been begging for scraps. Listen here, old man, he growled, stepping forward menacingly. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this is a serious repair shop. We don't need cheap parlor tricks to impress anyone. Tricks? The man's eyes locked onto Mark's, unwavering. You want to see a real trick? Before anyone could react, he strode purposefully towards a BMW X5, a forgotten hulk gathering dust in a corner for 2 weeks. That car there, you told the customer it needed a new engine, didn't you? Mark froze, a cold dread seizing him. It was true, but how in the hell did this vagrant know that? The problem isn't the engine, the man continued, his voice calm yet powerful. It's the high-pressure fuel pump, a $1,200 part. You quoted $15,000 for a new engine. Tommy swallowed hard, his eyes wide. How can you tell just by looking? Because I heard the telltale noise when you started the car earlier, the man explained, already at the BMW's hood. I can prove it. Emily watched, mesmerized, as he opened the hood, his finger pointing with surgical precision to specific components. Look at these fuel lines. The subtle wear here, the oxidation there, classic symptoms of a high-pressure pump failure. Kevin, his face now a furious crimson, quickly double-checked with another scanner, his own diagnosis devastatingly wrong. My God, Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. If he's right, we were about to charge that customer $14,000 more for a problem that doesn't even exist. Mark felt his control evaporating completely. It's a coincidence. 2 coincidences in a row, nothing more. The man's gaze pierced Mark, sending a shiver down his spine. For a fleeting moment, Mark saw something in those eyes he instinctively recognized. The quiet, absolute authority of someone who had commanded, who had led, who had been profoundly respected. Coincidence? The man repeated slowly, his tone laced with an icy sarcasm. Like when you called my first diagnosis beginner's luck? The tension in the workshop was thick enough to cut with a knife. Emily sensed she was witnessing something far grander than a simple misunderstanding, a situation with layers she couldn't yet unravel. "Still want that sandwich?" Mark sneered, desperately trying to reassert his dominance. "Or are you going to keep pretending to be some luxury car expert?" The man remained silent for several long, agonizing seconds. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a profound sadness that made Emily's heart ache. "I've been many things in my life," he said softly, "but I have never ever pretended to be something I'm not." He turned to leave, but Mark couldn't let him go. The public humiliation he'd meticulously planned had spectacularly backfired, and that was simply unacceptable. "Hey, wait a minute," Mark roared. "You come in here causing trouble, doing some parlor tricks, and now you think you can just waltz out like some kind of hero?" The man paused at the door, his back still to them. "Heroes don't exist," he replied, his voice a near whisper, laced with an unbearable sorrow. "There are only people who have lost absolutely everything, and still try to help others." And with that, he slipped out, leaving behind a suffocating silence and four people who were just beginning to grasp that they had encountered a soul far more complex than his appearance suggested. Emily rushed to the window, watching him walk slowly down the street, hands buried deep in his pockets, shoulders slumped as if under an invisible, crushing weight. For an instant, she swore she saw him halt before a lamppost, his gaze fixed on a faded photo of a child, one of those missing person flyers that most people simply pass by. What she couldn't see was the single tear that traced a path down his weathered cheek as he recognized in that child's innocent eyes the very same light his own daughter had lost 15 years ago, on a rainy night he could never, ever forget. Every flawless diagnosis, every silent acceptance of their scorn, every grueling day on the streets, it was all a self-imposed penance for a tragedy that still consumed his very core. But what the arrogant mechanics at Premium Auto didn't comprehend was that they were dealing with a man who had already endured the ultimate loss. And when you have nothing left to lose, every new injustice only sharpens a determination they were entirely incapable of understanding. Emily couldn't sleep a wink that night. The man's uncanny ability to diagnose, the surgical precision of his insights, the way he navigated complex electronic systems, as if by instinct, it all relentlessly hammered at her mind. The next morning, she arrived at the shop an hour early, driven by an insatiable need for answers. She went straight to her computer. If her instincts were right, there would be digital footprints of that extraordinary technical prowess. "Direct injection system," she murmured, typing furiously. "Fuel pressure sensor, high pressure pump. Porsche 911 2011 to 2015. The search results left her utterly breathless. These weren't mere specifications, they were intricate technical details, the kind only specialized engineers or elite professional drivers would possess. Tommy walked in, finding her still mesmerized by the screen. "Emily, what in the world are you doing here so early?" "Researching that man from yesterday," she replied, turning the monitor toward him. "Look at these technical forums. The exact specifications he mentioned are only discussed in the most exclusive circles of high-performance motorsports." "So what?" Tommy scoffed. "Anyone can read that stuff online." "Tommy," she said patiently, her voice firm. "He knew the memory diagnostic codes. He didn't read it on the internet. He knew it." Mark arrived just then, catching the end of their conversation. "Still obsessing over that lunatic?" "Forget it, Emily. It was dumb luck, pure coincidence, anything but actual talent." But Emily had unearthed something far more compelling. On a specialized forum dating back to 2007, a user named Dark Horse Racing had posted astonishingly detailed technical analyses of the very same car models the man had diagnosed yesterday. "Mark, look at this," she insisted, thrusting the screen closer. "This user was predicting the exact problems our beggar identified, 15 years before these cars even hit the market." "Coincidence," Mark repeated, but this time, his voice lacked its usual conviction, a tremor of doubt in its place. Just then, the workshop door swung open, and the man reappeared. This time, he wasn't alone. An impeccably dressed, elegant woman in her 50s accompanied him, a striking figure who clearly belonged nowhere near this gritty working-class neighborhood. "Good morning," he said calmly. "This is Catherine Miller, owner of a McLaren 720S that you, Mark, declared beyond repair." Mark's face went utterly white. That McLaren, a $600,000 electronic nightmare, had been his shop's most humiliating failure in months, a problem no one in town could crack. "Miss Miller?" Mark stammered, his voice betraying his shock. What are you doing here with him?" Catherine offered a cool, knowing smile. I encountered this gentleman last night in the hotel parking lot. When I mentioned my car's predicament, he offered such a precise technical explanation that I decided to bring him here myself. He gave you a technical explanation about a McLaren? Tommy blurted, utterly incredulous. Failure of the hybrid system control module, the man stated, his voice unwavering. A conflict between the electric motor and combustion engine software protocols. It's a known defect in the 2019 models, though McLaren never publicly acknowledged it. Another stunned silence enveloped the workshop. Emily, with trembling fingers, quickly cross-referenced the information on her computer. There it was, a confidential technical bulletin, accessible only to authorized McLaren dealers. How in the world do you know that? Kevin demanded, having just arrived and overheard. The man hesitated, that same guarded look returning. I've worked with high-performance automobiles. Where? Mark pressed, his arrogance now tinged with genuine fear. Tell us where. Various places over many years, he replied evasively. Catherine, sensing the escalating tension, stepped in. Well, if you're unwilling to fix my car, I can always take it elsewhere. No, Mark stammered, his words tumbling out. Of course we want to fix it. It's just that, the man interjected calmly, pointing directly at Mark. You implied my knowledge was mere showmanship. The situation was rapidly spiraling. Catherine was clearly a high-value client, and her presence there with the bum was making Mark break out in a cold sweat. Perhaps we can strike a deal, the man proposed. If I successfully repair Miss Miller's McLaren, you'll give me a genuine opportunity to demonstrate my abilities. Not for a sandwich, but for a job. Mark's eyes darted between Catherine and the man, his mind racing, calculating the colossal risks. If the man failed, he'd be utterly humiliated before a powerful customer. If he succeeded, Mark didn't even dare to contemplate that possibility. And what if you don't succeed? Mark challenged, a last desperate attempt at control. If I don't succeed, the man replied, his voice firm, I will never set foot in this establishment again, and you may film my departure and post it wherever your heart desires. Emily watched, utterly captivated, as the two men locked gazes, a silent battle playing out that transcended a simple automotive diagnosis. All right, Mark finally conceded, a grudging defeat in his voice. But you have 2 hours. If it's not fixed by then, you're out of here for good. The man nodded and approached the McLaren, his hands reaching out to the hood with an almost sacred reverence, as if reuniting with a long-lost friend. Catherine leaned towards Emily. There's something truly special about this man, she whispered. Last night when he explained my car's problem, it was like listening to a master speak of his art. Emily nodded, watching him open the McLaren's hood with precise, confident movements. May I ask you a question, Miss Miller? How exactly did you two meet? He was sitting on the curb, looking at a small photo and crying softly, Catherine recounted, wiping a tear from her own eye. When I approached to offer help, he asked me if I had children. He told me he lost his own a long time ago, and he's been searching for purpose ever since. The revelation struck Emily like a physical blow. Suddenly, every piece clicked into place. The profound sadness in his eyes, the way he spoke of cars not as machines but as living entities, his silent, dignified acceptance of their contempt. Meanwhile, the man worked on the McLaren, his concentration absolute, mesmerizing everyone in the workshop. Every motion was deliberate, every decision surgical. It was like watching a master artisan breathe life back into a broken masterpiece. 2 hours vanished like 2 minutes. When he finally looked up, his eyes gleamed with a quiet triumph he hadn't shown since his arrival. Done, he simply stated. Catherine, trembling with anticipation, started the car. It purred to life, a deep, contented rumble, like a satisfied cat. The transformation was breathtaking. Where before there had been hesitant coughs and unsettling rattles, now there was only pure, controlled power. My God, she murmured, tears streaming down her face. 3 separate dealerships told me it was impossible to fix without replacing the entire $80,000 module. Mark was utterly dumbfounded. Kevin and Tommy stared as if they'd seen a ghost. Emily, however, felt a much larger, more incredible picture forming in her mind. That afternoon, as he prepared to depart, having politely refused any payment from Catherine, Emily caught up to him on the street. Wait, she called out. I need to ask you something. He paused, turning only partially. You're not just an ordinary mechanic, are you? He stood silent for several long, heavy seconds. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the crushing weight of years of unspoken grief. I've been many things in my life. A mechanic was never one of them. Then what were you? Emily pressed. For a moment as he turned fully to face her, she saw beyond the disheveled facade, beyond the sorrow and the resignation. She saw a man who had once commanded $500,000 machines at dizzying speeds of 300 kilometers per hour. A man who had tasted the intoxicating elixir of victory and then the crushing, absolute desolation of loss. I was someone who believed that speed could heal any pain, he replied, his gaze distant, until I discovered that some wounds only truly mend when you stop running from them. He walked away, leaving Emily standing there, realizing she had just met someone whose story was infinitely deeper, far more tragic than anyone in that workshop could have ever conceived. That night, Emily returned to her computer, a new, unsettling suspicion gnawing at her. What she was about to uncover about this man would not only shatter her perceptions of him, but redefine everything she thought she knew about legends, about downfalls, and about the impossible grace of second chances. She spent the entire night poring over data. When the first rays of dawn pierced the sky, she held a discovery in her hands that would change everything forever. Daniel Walker, she murmured, staring at the screen, her voice barely a breath. Three-time Formula One world champion, known as the Ghost for his uncanny ability to materialize from nowhere and seize impossible victories. The accompanying photographs displayed a younger man with dark, vibrant hair, clutching gleaming trophies, champagne showering around him, surrounded by adoring crowds chanting his name. It was the same face that, just yesterday, had been humiliated for a simple sandwich. Further research unveiled the heartbreaking tragedy. In 2009, during a fateful race in Monaco, a catastrophic miscalculation by his team sent his car hurtling into a wall at 300 kilometers per hour. He survived, but his 8-year-old daughter, watching from the stands, suffered a fatal heart attack from the shock and died in the hospital. 6 months later, his wife, unable to forgive him, took her own life. Daniel Walker vanished from the public eye that same year, selling everything, donating millions to charity, disappearing without a trace until yesterday, when he reappeared, asking to fix a car in exchange for food. Emily arrived at the workshop the next morning, resolve hardening her jaw, only to find Mark recording a smug video on his phone. "Guys, you won't believe the story I'm about to tell," he smirked into the camera. "Yesterday, a beggar actually showed up here, thinking he was a mechanic. The guy was so desperate, he offered to work just for food." Tommy and Kevin guffawed in the background, comically reenacting the man's moments of humiliation. "The funniest part," Mark continued, a cruel glint in his eye, "is that the old man did some parlor tricks with a scanner and now thinks he's some kind of luxury car expert. I'm going to post this, and we'll get thousands of views with his face all over it." Emily felt her blood run cold, a fiery rage igniting within her. "Mark, you absolutely cannot post that." "Why not?" he challenged, indignant. "It's free content. Homeless man tries to be a mechanic and fails miserably, is going to go viral." "Because," Emily retorted, her voice shaking with fury, "you're about to become the biggest idiot on the internet." Mark stopped recording, his face twisted in annoyance. "What in God's name are you talking about?" Emily opened her laptop, spinning the screen around for all to see. "Gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to Daniel the Ghost Walker, three-time Formula One world champion, winner of 23 Grand Prix races, and widely regarded as one of the most gifted drivers in the history of motorsports." A deafening silence fell over the workshop. Mark stared at the screen, then at Emily, then back at the screen, his jaw hanging open. That's impossible," Tommy stammered, his bravado utterly shattered. "The guy was asking for food." "That guy," Emily continued, her voice unwavering, "lost everything after an unimaginable personal tragedy and has been living on the streets for 15 years. And yesterday, you humiliated a living legend of the world because he didn't fit your narrow expectations of what a hero should look like." Kevin edged closer to the screen, his eyes wide as he studied the photos. "My God, it's really him. I had posters of this man plastered all over my room when I was a teenager." Mark was as white as a sheet. But he didn't say anything. Why didn't he tell us who he was?" "Because," Emily replied coldly, her gaze fixed on him. "Men like Daniel Walker don't have to prove anything to people like you." At that precise moment, the door opened, and Daniel entered, accompanied by Catherine Miller and 3 other impeccably dressed individuals. "Good morning," he said calmly, a quiet power in his voice. "I've brought some acquaintances who expressed a desire to tour your workshop." Mark gulped, his eyes widening in terror as he recognized one of the figures. John Richardson, CEO of Reed Automotive Group, the largest luxury car dealership chain on the East Coast. Mr. Walker, Richardson began, his voice imbued with profound respect. When Catherine informed me of your impressive diagnostic capabilities, I simply had to witness it for myself. I'm here to offer you the position of technical director of our performance division, a starting salary of $500,000 a year, plus profit sharing. Our offer, another man chimed in, is $2 million annually. Daniel listened in silence, but his eyes met Mark's, a knowing, almost pitying look in their depths. It's truly fascinating, Daniel observed, his voice calm, how quickly people alter their behavior once they discover your true identity. Emily approached him, laptop in hand. Daniel, you need to see this. She showed him the video Mark had been recording. Daniel watched silently as Mark, Tommy, and Kevin mocked him, their plan to turn his humiliation into a viral sensation laid bare. You are going to post this? Daniel asked Mark, his voice dangerously quiet, the calm before a storm. Mark stammered, his words a jumbled mess. I didn't know. I'm so sorry. I didn't know that you were famous, that you had money. Daniel moved closer, his presence commanding. Or did you simply not know that I was a human being who deserved basic respect? John Richardson, overhearing the exchange, instantly transformed. Mark Thompson, correct? You own this repair shop? Yes, sir, Mark stammered, visibly shaking. Well, Richardson declared, his voice chillingly firm, I've just canceled the maintenance contract my company held with you. 50 cars a month, $300,000 a year. I refuse to do business with individuals who humiliate vulnerable people. Catherine stepped forward, her voice equally sharp. And I too will be advising all my friends at the club to avoid this establishment. A reputation for such cruelty spreads like wildfire among our clientele. Tommy tried to intercede. Gentlemen, it was just a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Daniel asked, his gaze sweeping over the three mechanics. You laughed at my appearance, called me crazy, offered $20 for work worth thousands, and planned to exploit me as an internet joke. Which part of that was a misunderstanding? Emily, pulling out her own cell phone, stepped forward. Actually, I recorded everything yesterday. She displayed the video of Mark, Tommy, and Kevin's cruel mockery of Daniel. And I've already posted it on social media, with his real identity attached. 15,000 shares in the last 2 hours. Mark's legs gave out, almost collapsing beneath him. His reputation, his business, his entire world was crumbling in real time. Daniel turned to Emily, a genuine warmth in his eyes. Thank you for believing in me when no one else would. He then faced the assembled businessmen. Gentlemen, I genuinely appreciate your generous offers, but first I have a small piece of unfinished business to attend to here. He approached Mark one last time, his voice low and resonant. Yesterday, you told me I should know my place. Today, Mark, you'll finally learn what yours is. John Richardson handed his card to Emily. Young lady, if you ever desire to work for a company that truly values character over superficial appearances, please give me a call. As the distinguished group prepared to leave, Daniel paused at the door. Mark, he called back, his voice echoing in the stunned silence. That video you were going to post mocking me. Emily posted the real version of the story. Now the entire world can witness who truly needs a lesson in humility. And with that he departed, leaving behind a silent workshop and 3 men who had just learned the devastating true price of prejudice. Mark stared at his phone, watching the notifications explode. Furious comments, loyal customers canceling contracts, long-standing suppliers severing ties. In mere hours, premium auto repair had become a synonym for discrimination and cruelty. Kevin walked to the window, watching Daniel effortlessly step into a gleaming limousine with the businessmen, while reporters drawn by the unfolding drama clamored outside. Man, Tommy muttered, his voice hollow, we just humiliated a global legend because he looked poor. But perhaps the most terrifying realization of all wasn't the inevitable financial ruin or the inescapable public shame they would face. It was the chilling understanding that Daniel Walker had meticulously orchestrated every single second of those 2 days, allowing them to fully expose their own ugliness before he finally spectacularly revealed who he truly was. 6 months later, Daniel Walker was the highly respected technical director of Reed Automotive Group, commanding a salary of $500,000 a year. His astonishing rags-to-riches tale had been transformed into a gripping Netflix documentary, inspiring millions across the globe. Premium Auto Repair, a casualty of its owner's prejudice, closed its doors after only 2 months. Mark lost absolutely everything. His home, his luxury car, his once pristine reputation. Tommy and Kevin, fired and disgraced, were forced to flee town to escape the viral humiliation. Emily, the sole beacon of compassion, was promptly hired by Daniel's new team, her salary now 3 times what it had been. Prejudice doesn't merely blind those who discriminate, Daniel reflected in a poignant interview. It blinds an entire society to the extraordinary talents hidden behind appearances they refuse to see. Mark, in a desperate, belated attempt, tried to issue a public apology, but it was far too late. He had learned through bitter experience that humiliating vulnerable people doesn't just shatter their lives. Eventually, it shatters your own. The true revenge wasn't to destroy Mark, but to illuminate for the entire world that second chances are indeed real, but only for those who are willing to offer them, never for those who heartlessly deny them.